Hello everyone, my name is Mayank Pahwa. Today we are going to discuss about one chapter called Real Numbers. Real Number is the chapter in class 10th mathematics. These are the subtopics which we are going to cover in this particular chapter, that is called number system flowchart, elucid division lemma, division algorithm, fundamental theorems on arithmetic, revisiting irrational numbers, rational numbers and their decimal expressions. It's my request to all the students who are watching this video. In the class 9th, in the previous class, we learned one chapter that is called number system. Kindly please go through that chapter, have a quick glance of it, because uh, this chapter is basically the continuation of that particular chapter only. So if you go through the concepts which you have learned in class 9th, it will definitely help you to understand the concepts which you are going to learn in this chapter in a very easy way. So let's move upon the topic here. First of all, we'll discuss about the basic number system which we have learned in class 9th. Just have a quick glance of it. So I am representing it in the form of tree here. We studied in class 9th that all the real numbers are divided into two particular segments. That is rational numbers and irrational numbers. So rational numbers which are representing in the form of p by q and which cannot be represented in the form of p by q, these are called irrational numbers. We'll come to know in the later slides here. Then further upon, we break these rational numbers into integers, terminating decimals, repeating decimals, and further upon integers into whole numbers, then from whole numbers towards natural numbers. So this is a quick glance of it. This we have already covered in class 9th mathematics. So it's my again request to you, kindly please go through that particular chapter, learn the concepts again, then watch this video. It becomes very easy for you to understand the concepts in this particular chapter if you are already aware of the basic concept which I've studied in previous class. So let's start the topic here. This is the first main topic which we are going to learn in this particular chapter, that is called real numbers. This topic is called Euclid's division lemma. Let's break this word Euclid's division then lemma. First of all, you should know what do you mean by this word called lemma. Lemma is nothing. It is a proven statement used for proving another statement. Let us take a very layman example. I say you one statement that is called, let us say that is called 2 into 3 is equal to 6. I know, as we all know, that 2 multiplied by 3, it is always equal to 6, and it is a proven statement. So I'll use this proven statement to prove another statement, That means I'll take the use of this statement, and with the help of this statement, I'll try to prove another statement. Let us say, for example, I'm solving one equation that is called 23 minus 17 plus 2 multiplied by 3 minus 14 is equal to how much? Now again this 2 into 3 has come. So I know it very well. 2 multiplied by 3 is what? 6. It's a proven thing. So I have used this to solve another statement. So this is a very layman example. Don't confuse this lemma with elucid division right now, because I have not explained this. I've just tried to explain the word lemma in a very layman sense. Now let's move further upon. We'll learn about Euclid's division lemma. Now what it means by that? The statement says, it states that the given two integers a and b, there exists a unique pair of q and r such that A is equal to B multiplied by Q plus R, whereas R varies between greater than equal to 0 and less than B. Now, what this statement means? Let us take, and one more point, this lemma is equivalent to dividend is equal to divisor into quotient plus remainder. Here A means dividend, B here means divisor, Q here means quotient, and R here means remainder. So this division lemma signifies this particular formula. Now let's take a very simple example to understand this. Let us see, I have taken one example. I'm dividing 17 by 2. I'm dividing 17 by 2. Now, in this particular, A is equal to B multiplied by Q plus R, or dividend is equal to divisor into quotient plus remainder. What is dividend? What is divisor? What is quotient? And what is remainder? So that means 2, I have to divide this 17 by 2, right? So I'm just dividing like this. Now, 2 into 8 is what? 16. So now the remainder is what? 1. This 2, right? This 2 is called what? This is called basically divisor. This is called what? Divisor. And this 17 is called what? Dividend. The number which is going to be divided. That is called dividend, right? The 17 is called what? Dividend. And this 8 is called what? Quotient. So 8 is called what? Quotient. And this 1 is called what? Remainder. So now I can you can see like this. We have done is we have multiplied 2 by 8, then we get 16, but we have not reached up to 17 for several, because then so that's why the remainder will come what? 1. So I can write like this, 17 upon 2 is like this, 2 into 8 plus 1. Why 2 into 8 plus 1? Because if I divide 2 by 17, I get 2 into 8, that is what? 16. This 8 is nothing, this is what? Quotient. So I am representing this in the form of this particular formula, that is 2 into 8 plus 1. So 2 is what? Dividend. Sorry, 2 is what? So 2 is what? Divisor. 8 is what? Quotient. And 1 is what? Remainder. And that is equal to what? 17. And 17 is what? Dividend. So the formula becomes what? Dividend is equal to divisor into quotient plus remainder. Or you can say A is equal to B multiplied by Q plus R. This is the point here. And very important, the value of R lies between 0 and B, greater than equal to 0 and less than B. B is what? B is nothing, it's a divisor. And if I divide 17 by 2 here, what is the divisor here? This is 2. So if I take this example, the value of R lies between 0 and 2, because the value of B is 2 and B is what? Divisor. So value of R lies between 0 and 2. 2 means what? R should be less than 2, but greater than equal to 0. So equal to 0 and less than 2 means what? Equal to 1. So it can take the value 0 or 1, right? So it depends upon the particular number. So this is the thing which we need to learn about it. And very another important point, the quotient and remainder obtained are going to be unique. Yes, it's very obvious. For every number, for every two numbers which are going to be divided, here 17 upon 2, let us say 19 upon 6, let us say 492 upon 17, any number, the quotient will always become unique and remainder will become unique, because that is for that particular number only. So I hope you get this point. So here we learn about the elusive division lemma. Now on the basis of it, we are going to solve one question here further. This question says, show that every positive even integer is of the form 2q and every positive odd integer is of the form 2q plus 1, where q is some integer. Now, first of all, you should know what do you mean by a positive even integer and a positive odd integer. We have learned in class 9th about the number system. Now here, this is number line, this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, that means towards positive side. This is -1, this is -2, this is towards negative side. So we know that here towards the positive sides are what? Positive integers, right? And we're looking for positive even integer. So positive even integer means what? 2, 4, 6, 8. Why? Because the word says even. And even are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So even numbers are what? Which are perfectly divisible by 2. Even numbers are that only, right? And positive odd integer means what? 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, like this, right? And odd means what? Which are not divisible by 2. So we have to show that every positive even integer is of the form 2q and every positive odd integer is of the form 2q plus 1. We'll prove this with the help of Illucid lemma. Illucid lemma, we came to know about dividend is equal to what? Divisor into quotient plus remainder. So dividend is what? Divisor into quotient plus remainder. Whereas the remainder lies between 0 and b. In that particular thing, we came to know about a is equal to bq into r, whereas b is what? Divisor. Now here we have taken the value of b as 2. Why? B means divisor. And he says the positive even integer and uh, even integer. Why? Let us say, for example, if I'll just explain you a very simple way here. Let us say I've taken a as, let us say a is that particular positive integer which I'm looking for it, right? Positive even integer. So I've taken this as a. I know that a is equal to what? So a is positive even integer, that is of the form of 2q, right? 2q. Let us say I've taken the form of 2q. I know that if it is an even integer, it must be divisible by 0, or so it must be divisible by 2, because all the even numbers are what? Which are divisible by 2. Now, if any number is divisible by 2, let us say, for example, if I'm taken 16, I'll divide it by 2. It will become perfectly divisible, right? It will not leave any remainder. Remainder will leave when it is become it divided by 17. Remainder will come 1, right? But 16 will not leave any remainder. If I divide 8 by 2, no, it will not leave any remainder. So if I divide any number by 2, remainder will always will come what? 0. So if the remainder will come but 0, equation will become like this. So that means 2 is what? Divisor here, right? So q means what? Quotient here, and remainder must have been 0. That's why it takes the form of 2q. And a is that particular number, so it becomes what? Dividend. I hope you get this point. So this is the word thing which he wants to ask here. So here, when the r is 0, so we have taken the remainder as 0 here. This equation becomes what? A is equal to 2q, which shows that a is even. Definitely a is even, because a is even because even number are always perfectly divisible by 2 and remainder will always become 0. Remainder is 0, that's why equation will become like this, otherwise not possible. Now if I take remainder as 1, that means remainder is there, then the equation will become like this, plus 1. Plus 1 signifies here remainder is 1. So remainder is 1 means the which shows that a is odd. Yes, definitely a is odd, because if it has been an even number, there is no remainder. So remainder is here, it will definitely be an odd number. I hope you get this point. So we have proof here with the help of Illucid lemma. So we have learned one concept called Illucid lemma. Now we are going to learn here about the prime factorization technique, which is very important here. Now, how do we see? We are using this technique, we are using this concept in the fundamental theorem of arithmetic and other concepts too will later on. Prime factorization is a very important concept. Now, what do you mean by it? Understand. Prime factorization, it is a method of expressing a natural number as a product of prime numbers. First of all, you should know what do you mean by a natural number, then what do you mean by a prime number. We have already learned in our previous classes. Natural numbers are all counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, up to infinity. Prime numbers are a number which have a factor of 1 and itself, which are, that means, let's say 7, let's say 3. So 7 is divisible by 1 and itself, rest no other factor. So I hope you get this point. In the same way about the 3, 5, right, 11, these all are prime numbers. So now it is a method of expressing any natural number. So I've taken the example here. This is the natural number 72. So I have to express this natural number as a product of what? Prime number. So I have to express the natural number. So I have to break this natural number into the product of prime numbers. How do I break it? So let us take like this 72. So I always have to divide it by a prime number, never by another number, because 72 can be divided by 4 also, 8 also. So if I divide by 4, that is not a wrong thing, but this is what we are not looking for in the prime factorization, because 4 is not a prime number. Why it is not a prime number? Because it is divisible by 2. So I hope you get this point, right? It is because 4 is not a prime number because it is divisible by 2, divisible by 1, 4. So it has more than 2 factors there, right? So I can also divide it by 8 also. No, but we don't want to do like this because we are looking for only prime factors. So what I'll do here is I'll divide 72 by, first of all, any lowest prime factor, which is called what? 2. So I'll divide by 2 here. If I divide by 2 here, I'll get 36. Next 2 becomes 18. Next to 9. Then further 9 is not divided by 2. So next nearest prime factor is 3. So 3 into 3 is what? 9. So in this way, I'll break 72 like this. 2 into 2 into 2 into 3 into 3. So I hope you get this point. So this is the prime factorization of 72. In the same way about the 48, that is 2 into 2 into 2 into 2 into 3. So I hope you get this point. Now let's move towards the next important point. We'll use this concept in the fundamental theorem of arithmetic. Fundamental theorem of arithmetic says there is a composite number. Composite number means which are more than 2 factors. Let's say 15 is a composite number. It has a factor of 3, it has a factor of 5, right? It has a factor of 1, 15. There are more than 4 factors, right? So more than 2 factors are there. That's why it is called a composite number. So it says that every composite number can be expressed as a product of primes, and this prime factorization for a given number is unique if the arrangement of the prime factors is ignored. Now, very important point here is, first of all, I need to arrange this number in terms of prime factors. That means I have to use what? Prime factorization. Then only I can arrange this number in the terms of prime factors. And just now we have learned about the prime factorization. So I'll again break this 72 like this in terms of prime factors. Now He says arrangement should be ignored. What do you mean by this? If I find the prime factor 72 like this, I can say 2 into 36, 2 into 18, 2 into 9, so 3 into 3, next 3 into 1. So first arrangement is like this, 2 into 2 into 2 into 3 into 3. Now I can also do like this, 72. Why to start from 2? Why not I'll start from another prime number? Let's say I start from 3, because ultimately I have to divide it by any prime number, right? Because I'm looking for a prime factor in prime factorization. So if I divide by 3 here, I'll get 24. Next 3, I'll get 3 8 is 24, so that is 8. Next 3 will not be divided by. Next prime factor which divided by 8 is 2, right? So 2 4s are 8. Next is again 2. 2. The next is again 2. So the next arrangement of factors is like this: 3 into 3 into 2 into 2 into 2. But initially when I have break the 72 like this, the factors arrangements are here like this: 2 into 2 into 3 into 3. In the first case, 2 3s are there and 3 2s are there. In the second case also, 3 2s are there and 2 3s are there. Same thing. Only difference is the arrangement is different. In the first case, I'll start it from 3 3 2 2 2. The next case, 2 2 2 3 3. He says you have to ignore this arrangement. You have to ignore this arrangement. So if you find the prime factors of any number, and this prime factors of any number are always unique, because for every number these are only the prime factors. For 7222, always the prime factors are like this, always. If I ignore the arrangement, then total number of prime factors are always this. These are the 5 factors: 2 2 2 3 3. So these 5 will become about the 72. Always it becomes like this. So you have to ignore the arrangement, right? So I hope you get this point. So we have learned about it that composite number is first of all broken down into the product of prime factors, and we have to ignore the arrangement of prime factors. This is the fundamental theorem of arithmetic. So we'll take this concept of prime factorization and solve this and try to solve the question here. The question says, consider the number 4 raised to power n, where n is a natural number. Check whether is there any value of n for which 4 raised to power n ends with digit 0. Use the prime factorization technique. How? So we'll use this technique to solve this question. Question says there is a number 4 raised to power n. We don't know the exact number. We have only 4 raised to power n. Now n can take any value because n is a variable here, right? If I take n1, so 4 raised to power 1 will become what? 4. Now if I take n2, 4 raised to power 2 will become what? 16. Like this, move on. Question says, you need to find any value of n, for which 4 raised to power n ends with digit 0. We need to check. So we need to check, is there any value possible of n when we put that value, the number, the resultant number ends with digit 0. Is it possible? So we need to check it out here. First of all, you should know here how to find 0 in any particular number. How to get 0 in any particular number. Let us say there's a number called 2320. Now how do I get 0 here? Okay, let's break this number. 2322 into 10, that is resulted into this now, 2320, nothing else. So if I take 23200, how do I get this? 232 into 100. That means if any number is having an 10 in the end, 10 in the end, 20 in the end, 30 in the end, only that particular number can have a 0 in the end, otherwise not possible. I hope you get this point. So to the number having digit 0 in the end, it must be either multiply by 2 or either multiply by 100, either multiply by 1000, whatever it is, or any number to the power of 10, right? 10, 100, 1000, 10,000. Then automatically in that particular number, in the end, in the end 0 will always be there. That is for sure. Because you are multiplying by 10, 100 like this. Now, understand one thing. We are using the prime factorization technique to solve this. Now, what prime factorization technique says? We need to find the prime factors. And if I take the 10 like this, I know to have 0 in the end, it should be at least multiplied by 10 or by 100 like this. But 10 is not a prime number, no? We need to find the prime factors. We know that the prime factors of 10 are what? At least 2 and 5. 2 and 5 are the prime factors which exactly divide 10. Because factor, see, I'm looking for a prime factor. And factor is what? Factor is that particular number which exactly divides a given number. So number is 10. These are the numbers which divide the 10 exactly, right? And these are the prime numbers. So it becomes what? Prime factors. I hope you get this point. So we know that 2 and 5 are the prime factors. So if I break any number into the factors, into its factors, let's say previously we have break 72 like this, right? So if I break any number into the factors here, prime factors, if in that prime factors I have 2 and 5, I have 2 and 5, let's say I have 10, a number like this, and if I break 10 as 2 and 5, I know that when I multiply 2 by 5, it becomes what? 10. It becomes what? 10. So that means if in any number we have a factor of at least 2 and 5, that 2 and 5 when it multiplies, it becomes what? 10. And when it becomes 10, that means you are multiplying that number by 10. And when you are multiplying that number by 10, then automatically in that particular number, in the end, the 0 will definitely be there, because you are multiplying by basically what? 10. Let's say for example in this 232 into 10, so it becomes 0 in the end. I hope you get this point, right? So at least 1 2 and 1 5 must be there, irrespective how many can be there. If there are more 2's and 5's, we'll have more zeros. So I hope you are clarified with this point. Now we need to check, if we put any value of n, are we able to get 2 and 5 as a factor in this? Let's use the common sense here. 4 raised to power n means what? Let's say I have taken any value of n. Let's say I'll take value of 12, 4 raised to power 12. N can be taken by any value. Just sorry for that. So n can be taken any value, right? Let us say here I've taken 4 raised to power 12 here. Now understand something. I can break this 4 as 2 into 2. See, 4 raised to power 12 means what? 4 into 4 into up to 12 times. This is what 4 raised to power 12 means. Now I can break every 4 into 2 into 2. 2 into 2. So at every 4, I'll get 2 as a factor. But I am never getting 5 as a factor. And to make it as a 10, I need 2 and 5 both. But I'm only getting 2 here. I'm not getting 5 here. So if I'm not getting 5 here, how would I make it a 10? And if it not becomes 10, then there is no possibility that 0 will come in the end. That means there is no value of n for which 4 raised to power n ends with 0. This is the basic idea if I use by using a prime factorization. See how simple it becomes. So I hope you get this idea here. So next we'll use this concept of prime factorization further upon. So we are using this prime factorization here in finding the LCM or in finding the HCF. Now how do we find it? See here, this is the product of highest power of all the prime factors involved in the number. See, we need to find the LCM here. First of all, you should know LCM means what? Least common multiple. This is the mean of LCM. This is the mean of LCM here. See, understand two things here. One is a factor, one is a multiple. Let us take any example called 6. There is a number called 6. If I have to find the factor of a number, factor means that number which perfectly divides a given number. And always remember, the factor of a number is always equal to that number or always less than that number. So if I am finding the factor of 6, that will become what? 6 and less than that number. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 6, all are factors of 6. Why? So two basic points. Factor of a number is always equal to that number. Equal to that means equal to 6. So for 6, 6 is always a factor. Why? Because 6 is perfectly divided by 6, and because 6 is a factor, so factor divides a number perfectly. And a factor is always equal to that number and less than that number. So less than that number means 1, 2, 3. So 1, because 6 is divided by 1 also perfectly, divided by 2 perfectly, divided by 3 perfectly. But if I take 6 by 4, no, it is not possible because 6 is not dividing by 4 perfectly. I hope you get this point. So this is about the factors of 6. But what if I say about a multiple? Multiple of a number is always equal to that number and always greater than that number. So if I find the multiple of 6, it is always equal to that number. That means equal to 6 and always greater than that number. That means 6, next multiple is 12, next is 18, next is 24. So 6 into 1, 6 into 2, 6 into 3, like this. I hope you get this point. So multiple will become like this: 6, 12, 18, 24, and factors will become 6 or less than this. So we are, for just now we get to know about the multiple, right? Or a difference between a multiple and factor, because it will become very, very helpful for you to understand the concept of LCM and HCF. In LCM, the word is used is called multiple here, and HCF, the word used here is called factor here. So you should know how to differentiate between multiple and a factor. Now to find, we need to find the LCM with the help of prime factorization technique. And we have already learned about the prime factorization technique just now, right? Where we break the number into the prime factors. So in order to find the LCM, what we need to do? Let us say the question here is we need to find the LCM of 36 and 56. All right. So we have two numbers given. We need to use the prime factorization technique. So in the prime factorization technique is what? First, break the numbers into the prime factors. So now we have broken the 36 into its prime factors like this, and in the similar way 56 into the prime factors like this. I will not say it again how to find the prime factors. I've already told you. So this is the point out here. Now we have already find the prime factors. Now how to find the LCM here? LCM is the product of highest power of all the prime factors involved in the number. Now what do you mean by the statement? Break the statement like this. First of all, prime factors involved in the number. First of all, you should know the prime factors are involved in the number. What are the prime factors? Here 2 is involved between 36 and 56. 3 is involved, and 7 is involved. So these are the different prime factors which are involved in these two numbers. I hope you get this point. Next, we need to break like this: highest power of all these prime factors. All right, no issues. So highest power, this is 2. In 36, the highest power of 2 is what? 2 raised to power 2, because there are two 2's here. In 56, the highest power of 2 is what? 2 raised to power 3, because 3 2's are here. So highest power of 2 is what? 2 raised to power 3, which is available in 56. Next, come towards highest power of 3. It's available in 36, that is 3 raised to power 2. Next, towards 7, highest power of 7 is what? This 1 7. So only 7 raised to power 1, that is 7. So this is 2 raised to power 3, 3 raised to power 2, and 7. He says you need to find the product of all these, highest power of all the prime factors. So that's it. First of all, we find the factors, then we find the highest power of it, then we'll find the product of it, multiply it. If we multiply it, we'll get this. That's it. And resultant is what? 54. He says 2 raised to power 3, 3 raised to power 2, and 7. I hope you get this point. So in this way, we find the LCM using the prime factorization technique. Now next here is we are finding the HCF with the help of prime factorization technique. So HCF means what? HCF here means the highest common factor, right? That means what? HCF. Just now I told you the difference between a factor and a multiple. So in this, first of all, how do we have to find it? Yes, let us say with the help of an example, we have to find the HCF of 20 and 24. So first of all, break this 20 and 24 in the prime factors using the help of prime factorization technique. So 20 should be right like this and 24 should be right like this in the terms of prime factors. Next, in order to find HCF, you need to find the product of least power of all the common factors. So break the statement like this. First of all, find the common factors. Common factors means that factor which are available in both the numbers, right? Here 2 is available in 20 also and 24 also. So 2 is a common factor here. Clear? So, and how many 2's are common? 2 2's are here and 2 2's are here. Here 3 2's are here. But the common are what? 2 2's now. So 2 raised to power 2 is common in both. So 2 raised to power 2, right? So that means 2 2's are here which are common in both actually. 1 2 is extra here, but we need to find only common. As the statement says, we have to find the common factors. So first of all, common factor here is what? Common factor is 2 here, and there is no other common factor because 5 is available in 20, but 5 is not available in 24. 3 is available in 24, but it is not available in 20. So we'll not count it. We have to take the common factor which is available in both, right? So first of all, we have outlined the common factor. Here the 2 is a common factor. Then we need to find the least power of that common factor. So we have taken the least power. Least power means here there are 3 2's. That means 2 raised to power 3. And here there are 2 2's. 2 raised to power 2. So we have taken the least power. That means 2 raised to power 2. That means 2 into 2. So this is the HCF of this particular two numbers. That's it. So with the help of this, prime factorization, we are finding the HCF and LCM, right? I hope you get this point. So next, we are going to learn about the illicit division algorithm. Just now, we get to know about the illicit division lemma. We are going to use this illicit division lemma in this illicit division algorithm. Algorithm is nothing, it's a series of steps, right? In these series of steps, we are going to use the illicit division lemma, which we have just learned now. This algorithm is used to find the HCF of two numbers. See, just now we have find the HCF with the help of prime factorization. Now we are using one more technique to find the HCF, that is with the help of illicit division algorithm. Why? Because it is important. See, this method is useful only up to a certain extent. Let us say if the numbers are big, if I'll say you 2, 4, 2, 3, 9, if I say you 1, 2, 6, 4, 2, you have to find the HCF of these two numbers. Then with the help of prime factorization, it becomes very difficult. Why? Up to how much you will break the factors like this? No, it becomes very, very difficult for you. It's a time consuming, it's very, very time consuming process. So we need to find some other alternate method to find the HCF of big numbers. For this, elusive division algorithm will help you a lot. So it is helpful to obtain the HCF of two positive integers, right? Say A and B. With A is greater than B, follow the steps below. For the steps below. So we'll use it with the help of an example. I'll show you some example. With that particular example, we get to know how to find the HCF. See, okay. Now let's say here, I've taken an example here. You need to find the HCF of 135 and let's say 135 and 225. So you need to find the HCF of 135 and 225. So you know about the division lemma. That is what dividend is equal to divisor into quotient plus remainder into quotient plus remainder. So A is equal to B into Q plus R. We have just learned, right, division lemma. Now here, understand, we are again breaking this. So we have to find the HCF of two numbers, 135 and 225. So in this 135 and 225, first of all, so these are two integers here, 225 and 135. See, match with the equations, right? Match here. So we are looking for two positive integers. These are two positive integers, 225 and 135. Okay. So we need to find, yeah, just one second. Yeah. Here, with one integer is greater than the other, right? Here 225 is greater, right? And the greater number, whatever will be the greater number, right? See here, this is the greater number. So greater number will always become a dividend, always become, and this will always become a divisor. Why? You can ask me this. See, it's very simple. Let us say, for example, if I say you 17 upon 2, if I say you 17 upon 2, so so if I just divide this, if I simply divide this here, right? So if I divide like this, if I divide this number here, the resultant, let us say, let's take some number, right? Let's say here, if I take 14 upon 2, I'll get 7 here. But if I take the reverse side here, if I take 2 by 14, I divide it by 14 here, I'll get the number in fractions. And you know what? We are looking for the positive integers here, right? Positive what? Integers here. So we need to find, so we need to, so for getting in the terms of integer, integers are not fractions here. Integers are not fractions here. So the greater number, that's why the reason is that the greater number will always taken as a dividend and the smaller number will always taken as a divisor. Because if we take the reverse like this, it will lead into fractions, and once it leads into fractions, that is not an integer which we are looking for. So so if let's say here we have here 225 is greater than 135, so 225 is dividend and 135 is divisor. So we'll break this in the terms of division lemma. So we'll break this in terms of this formula here. That means if we divide 225 here, right? So divisor is 135. 135. So 135 ones are 135. because if I take 135 into 2, it becomes 270. So that's not possible. So I have to take 135 into 1, right? So if I take, that is 0, so out of here 12 by 3, that is what, 90. That is what, 90. So 90 is what, remainder, because it's not going to be further divided by. So if I break this in this formula, this is dividend, sorry, this is divisor, this is dividend, this is quotient, this is remainder. So let's break it out here. So if I break like this, it becomes like this. 225 is what, 135 into 1 plus 90. So this is dividend, divisor, quotient, and remainder. Let's understand this here. Your first step is break this in the form of division lemma. You have to continue this process until the remainder will become 0. Until the remainder will become 0. You have to continue this process. Why? Because we are looking for HCF, highest common factor. And factor is that number which perfectly divides the given number. If it perfectly divides the given number, there should be no remainder. If I say you 16 upon 2, it becomes 8. That's why the remainder is 0 now. Because if I take 17 upon 2, which I cut recently, because that's the reason out here, 17 upon 2, the remainder will become 1. No, that's not a proper factor. So you need to find HCF, means you need to find a factor. So in order to find a factor means you need to find that number which perfectly divides. And if a number perfectly divides, the remainder will always become what, 0. So you need to follow this process of division lemma until you find the remainder 0. You need to follow, right? So first step, 225, 135 will break like this. Now we'll get what remainder is what, 90. But we need to find the remainder as 0. So we need to find again next step. It will follow the same step again. How will follow the same step again? Now in the next step, you will take these two numbers, 135 and 90. If you look at the process, step 1, apply lemma. So we find this numbers, right? Next step, you have to find r is equal to 0, right? And if r is not equal to 0, apply it again, but you have to apply to the b and r. B and r means what? Divisor and, sorry, B and r is what? Divisor and remainder. So in the first step, r is not 0, so we'll have to apply it again on b and r as per the concept. So b is this and r is this. So next step we'll use for 135 and 90. So now 135 will become what? Dividend, and this will become what? Divisor. So if I again here 90, this is 135. So 90 ones are 90. So 5, there is 45. So this 45 is what? Remainder. 1 is what? Quotient. This is what? Dividend. This is what? Divisor. So I'll break like this again here, 90 into 1 plus 45. So next step. Again the remainder will become 45. It's not become 0. So if it has not become 0, I'll again the next step, I'll again follow the same process of division lemma. Now this time I'll take 90 and 45. I'll take 90 and 45. So again I'll take 90 and 45. So if I take 90 and 45, right? So here 45 will become what? Divisor. 90 will become what? Dividend. So 45 ones are 45. Yes. Sorry, 45 twos are 90. Yes. So this time it is actually divisible. Perfect, because the remainder will become what? 0. So we have to write like this, 45 into 2 plus 0. So remainder becomes 0. So once the remainder becomes 0, that means you get your answer. Now how do you get your answer? Remainder has become 0. Since the divisor at this step is 45, so this is the divisor. And this divisor is your HCF, because divisor is that number which we have to divide it, which is used for division, right? Here 17 upon 2, so 2 is a divisor. So we are looking for a highest common factor. Factor is that number which divide. So we are looking for a divisor here. Divisor that number which perfectly divides that particular number, right? In the case of HCF. So 45 is the number. So 45 is what? Your answer. So I hope you get this point. So I'm just explaining it in once more. So first step is, out of the two numbers given, right, the bigger number you have to use as a dividend, the smaller number you'll use as a divisor. So with the help of this, you have to break this in the form of division lemma. Dividend is equal to divisor into quotient plus remainder. So until you have to follow this process, until you have to get the remainder 0. Whether it will take 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, whenever the remainder will become 0, you have to stop it. That's it. And that particular step, that final step divisor is your answer. That will become your HCF. So for the first, we get this like this. 225 is what? 135 into 1 plus 90. Here remainder will again not become 0. So we'll again follow the same process. This time 135 and 90 will become what? 135 will become what? Dividend. 90 will become what? Divisor. So I'll break like this. 135 again. 90 into 1 plus 45. So again the remainder has not become 0. So I'll follow the same process again for division lemma. So that will become 90 and 45. So this time I'll use 90 and 45 here, because question says we have to use of B and R. We have to, if the R is not 0, apply this again to the B and R, and B will become what? Dividend, and R will become what? Divisor. So next time, if we use for 90 and 45, this time remainder has come what? 0. And once the remainder becomes 0, you'll get your HCF. So I hope you get this point. So this is all about the elucid division algorithm, which is used to find the HCF, nothing else. So here is one more question on the basis of this division algorithm. Show that any positive odd integer is of the form 4q plus 1 or 4q plus 3, where q is some integer. We know this. A is equal to bq plus r. Right? This is the elucid division lemma, which is used in algorithm to find the answer, to find the HCF, right? So A is equal to BQ plus R. This is the form of 4Q plus 1. That means 4 is what? Divisor, and 1 is what? Remainder, and 1 is what? Remainder. If I take this form 4Q plus 1, here 4Q plus 3, 3 is the remainder, 4 is divisor. So one thing I get to know here is the divisor is 4. And we know in this division lemma, A is equal to BQ plus R, but R is always greater than equal to 0 and less than equal to B. Here B is what? 4. So that means R is less than equal to 0 and less than equal to 4. So that means the value of R can be 0, it can be 1, it can be 2, it can be 3, but it will not be 4 because it is always less than 4. So these are the possible values of R, that is 0, 1, 2 and 3. We need to show up that odd integer takes the form of 4q1 and 4q3. Now it's very obvious. Just now we have seen one question previously. Even means that number which will not leave any remainder. If I even means any number which divides by 2. So if I take any number 16 divides by 2, it will not leave any remainder. It perfectly divides. That's it. Odd number means that number which is not divided by 2, and if it is not divided by 2, it will leave some remainder. That's it. So even means it will not leave any remainder. That is for sure. So if I take 4q, because here 4q plus 1 is given, you have to find this odd integer is you need to show that odd integer will take the form 4q plus 1 and 4q plus 3. Now we have 4 forms here: 4q plus 0 and 4q plus 1, 2, 3 and 4, because 4 values of remainder are here: 0, 1, 2 and 3. So 4q plus 0 means 4q. That means it's an even integer because it does not leave any remainder. That's it. I hope you get this point, right? Now he says about the odd integer 4q plus 1 and 4q plus 3. Yes, 4q plus 1 and 3, it's leaving an remainder of 1 and remainder of 3. So if it's leaving a remainder of 1 and remainder of 3, that means yes, it is an odd integer. It is an odd integer. So I hope you get this point. So odd number is that number which is not divisible by 2. So this is the point here. So let's move towards here. Yes. Sorry, one point I forget here about this 4q plus 2, because 0 means when I put 0 I'll get 4q, but when I get 2 as a remainder, and 2 is also both divisible by 2, right? Divisible by 2. So this is an even number, right? So even number is always divisible by 2. So that will again that shows this form is of what? Even number. This form is what? Of what? Even number. But this form is of what? Odd number, because it's leaving the remainder in terms of odd, 1, 3, like this. So this is the point out here. So next heading you have to work here is revisiting irrational numbers. See, just now in the ninth class also we learn about the irrational numbers. Just have a quick glance of it before moving upon the main thing which we have learned here. So irrational numbers are what? Irrational numbers are the numbers which cannot be expressed in the form of p by q. Let's say root 2, root 3. You cannot break this root 2 in the form of p by q. P by q. We know that root 3 is one, sorry for that. Okay. Let us say, for example, here root 3. Root 3 is 1.732. This is the values up to which we read in the books. But actually, this is not a fixed value. It moves upon 1.73254, something like it moves upon, right? There is no limit for it. So that's why if there is no limit for it, right, it goes endlessly like this. So it cannot be converted in the form of p by q. Why? If I say 1 by 7, 1.73, if I remove the decimal, I got it 100. But if I don't know where it ends, then how would I remove the decimal? How would I know that how much 0 will come in the denominator? So we cannot break this in the form of p by q. So these are what called irrational numbers. So irrational numbers can also be expressed as non-terminating, non-repeating decimals. Here are some examples. 0.4435443344, like this. There is an non-terminating. See, there is no end. It goes on. And one more thing is that also non-repeating. Very, very important, non-repeating. Because if it becomes repeating, then it becomes a rational number. Right? So this is non-terminating, non-repeating are always irrational numbers. So non-terminating means there is no end, infinite goes, and non-repeating. There is no sequence, no repeating sequence here. All sequences are different, right? So I hope you get this point. So this is about the irrational numbers. Now let's use the concept, very, very important here. Let's p be a prime number. This is a theorem. Let's p be a prime number. If p divides a square, then p also divides a, where a is a positive integer. Now what do you mean by it? Let's use I will explain this theorem with the help of an example. How? Let's see this. Let's prove like this. Sorry for that. See, I need to prove root 2 is irrational. I know it is an irrational number, but how would I prove it is irrational? How would I prove it? With when we are proving it, we'll get to know the various results, and with the help of that results, we are able to solve this theorem. We are able to get how this theorem works. So let's do this with the help of this example. We need to prove that root 2 is irrational. How? See, we'll use the method of contradiction here. Method of contradiction here. Now, what do you mean by a method of contradiction? What is it? See, what we'll use here is, let's say there is one process. Uh, See, what is now? What I mean by contradiction here? I have to prove root 2 is irrational. So I will contradict it. How? I will start assume that root 2 is rational. Root 2 is what? Rational. I know it is irrational, but I will use the method of contradiction. Contradiction means you need to assume that it is not irrational. Let us say it is irrational. You're contradicting the main thing. You're contradicting the exact thing, right? So let us assume that it is rational. Now I know if anything is rational, it should take the form of P by Q. It should take the form of P by Q. That is for sure, because rational numbers are numbers which take the form of P by Q. Take an example. Let's say 2.1. It's a rational number. If I remove the decimal, that becomes 21 by 10. That's it. This is a rational number. It takes the form of P by Q. This is P, this is Q, where P and Q both are what? Integers. And Q will never become 0. That is very, very important point. In the denominator, 0 will never come, because anything divided by 0 will becomes what? Infinity, which is not, which is not possible, right? So we don't, so denominator should not be 0. I hope you get this point. So root 2 is, let us say, let us assume that root 2 is rational. We are contradicting it, right? So if it is rational, it takes the form of P by Q. That is very obvious. So it takes the form of P by Q. And one more thing you need to find, one more thing you need to know is very, very important. We know this P by Q are integers. P by Q are integers. So P by Q are what? Integers. But we need to make sure the integers which we'll take here is, that should be co-prime. That should be what? Co-prime. Now, what do I mean by it? What do I mean by it? See, I'll take one example here. Now, let us say here, let us say I take 15 by 10. I take 15 by 10. How do I get it? I have one number, that is 1.5. I know 1.5 is a rational number. Why? If I remove decimal from 1.5, it becomes 15 upon 10. And 15 means P, this is Q. Both are integers. So it converts in the form of P by Q. That is for sure. Now understand one thing. 15 and 10, they both have a common factor now. 15, alright, sorry. So it's my mistake here. Okay, this is, yes. No mistake is here. 15 and 10 has a common factor. Why? What common factor? 15 is what? 5 into 3. This is 5 into 2. Sorry, no mistake. It is right. This is 5 into 2. So 5 is a common factor still now available. So if I remove, because I can write 15 as 5 into 3 and 10 as 5 into 2. I'll cut this 5. So resultant will become what? 3 by 2. 3 by 2. Now you know 3 and 2 have no common factor now. Have no common factor, because if they have a common factor, it will it will reduce to its lowest form. Like 15 upon 10 goes up to 3 by 2, because common factor is deleted, right? So now 3 by 2 has no common factor. When we get two integers, 3 is also integer, 2 is also integer, and these integers are co-prime. Co-prime means they don't have any common factor, right? So we need to find that value of P by Q which are co-prime, I hope you get this point. Okay, so that is a point out here which are co-prime here. So let us say here, for example, we need to find root 2 is irrational. So first of all, we contradict it. But how do we contradict it? We'll say root 2 is rational. If root 2 is rational, it takes the form of p by q. So and I need to find that value of p by q which are co-prime. That is for sure. Alright. So this is the p by q. So p by q are co-prime integers. That's the right word to say here. Now, how do I find it here? See, I have already contradict in a wrong way. I know it is not irrational. I know it is not rational. Still, I assume it's rational. Now I'll apply it. I'll check it out. If it's rational, it will come in the form of p by q, right? Now see, you'll get to know what I mean to say here. Now root 2 is what? P by q. So just now I explain here. We'll start by assuming root 2 as a rational. We need to find x and y such that root 2 is x upon y, right? So all p by q, x by x upon y, your wish, whatever you want to take. So let us say I'll take x upon y because in the solution it says x upon y. No issues, right? You can take p by q, no worries for it. Everything, both are right. So let's x and y has a common factor other than 1. So we divide that by common factor and assume that x and y are co-prime. Just now I show you some with the help of some example here. So you need to find that value of x and y which are co-prime. So you know root 2 is what? X upon y. So if I cross multiply, that becomes what? Root 2 into y is equal to x, because y will go here, right? So that is y root 2 is equal to what? X. Now what we need to do is we need to square both sides. We need to square both sides. So square this and square this. It becomes what? Y square root 2 into root 2 is 2. So that becomes what? 2y square, and RHS will become what? X square. So it becomes like this. So next steps. See, 1 second. Yeah. So just now we get here is 2y square is equal to what? X square. Clear? Just now we get it here. 2y square is equal to x square. Now here, what do you mean by it? Here, now here, he says 2 divides x square, and by theorem we can say that 2 divides x. Now see this theorem. Let's p be a prime number. If p divides a square, then p divides a, where a is a positive integer. Now how do I interpret it? See, so 2y square is equal to x square. Just now we get it out here. Now we can say like this: x square upon 2 is equal to y. Clear? So or you can say like this: if I take x square like this, so it becomes 2 by x square, right? Or you can simply like this, right? So x square upon 2 is equal to y. So x square upon 2 is equal to what? Y. So that means this x square divides 2 also. X square divides 2 also. It shows this, you can see it from the statement, x square divides what? 2. Clear? So x square divides what? 2. If x square divides 2, then it's very obvious x will also divide by 2, because x square is what? X into, so x square is what? X into x divided by 2. That means there must be some value which divides by 2 perfectly here. That is for sure, because then only it will result into some constant na? Here. So if x square divided by 2, then x will also be divided by 2. I hope you get this point again here. Now see this here. Now we have this value here, 2y square is equal to x square, right? 2y square is equal to x square. Now let us say here x is equal to 2z for some integer. Hence x is equal to what? 2z for some integer here. Now let us say here what it mean by his. See, 1 second here. See this. Yes. Now see here, just whatever we have learned here is let's explain it again. Okay, so that you don't have any confusion. Because this is a concept here, you need to understand it, how it becomes, how it actually come, right? How it actually come. In the exam, the proof will not come like this, but the concept is using again and again the questions. So we need to prove here root 2 is irrational. So first of all, we'll assume like this with the help of matter of contradiction. We'll assume like this root 2 is rational. Let us say for example, right? So if root 2 is rational, it takes the form of p by q or x upon y. So that becomes root 2 is equal to what? Root 2 is what? X by y. And we have to take that values of x and y which are co-primes. So if they have any common factor, cut that factor and reduce it in the form of co-prime. So once you reduce it here, in this case, root 2 is equal to x upon y. So that becomes what? Y. If I take y out here, cross multiply, I'll get y root 2 is equal to x, and y root 2 is equal to x means what? We get 2y square is equal to what? X square. How? We have square both sides. We have square both sides. On squaring both sides, we'll get this value 2y square is equal to x square. Now 2y square is equal to x square means what? Here length. So if I take 2 here, so y square is equal to x square upon 2. That means x square is divides by 2. X square divides by 2. See, match the statement. P divides by a square, right? So here x square divides 2. If x square divides 2, then x also divides by 2. Then x also divides by 2. I hope you get this point here, right? So this is the thing which we want to convey here. Okay, so x also divides by 2 here. Now let us say here, all right, okay. So this is the point here. So this x. So in the similar way, what he has done here is nothing. He has substituted this value of x. Here x is value here. He has substituted this value of x in the previous equation. Here. And when he solve this here, he'll get like this. Then again, when I get 2y square is equal to 4z square, if I take short it out here, that is y square is equal to 2z square. That means what? If I take 2 out here, y square upon 2 is equal to what? Z, right? That means again like this, if I take y square upon 2, means if I follow this theorem again, p divides a square. That means if y squared is divided by 2, that means y is also divided by 2, because if p divides a square, then p divides a. See, initially we find this for the value of x, right? We find this for the value of x. Now we find this for the value of y, because we have taken root 2 as a rational that will take the value of x upon y. So first of all, we take the value for x, then we'll take for y. For x, we get to know that it is divided by 2, because x square divided by 2 means x also divided by 2. That means x has a factor of 2 here. Factor of 2. That's why x is divided by 2. In the similar way, we find that y also divides by 2. Y also divides by 2. Now y also divides by 2 here means x also divides by 2, y also divides by 2, means both x and y are divided by 2. That is for sure. And if both x and y are divided by 2, means this 2 is a common factor of x and y, because factor is that number which perfectly divides a given number. So if 2 is a common factor, right, that means, so if 2 is a factor of x and y, 2 is a factor of x and y. So now from theorem, x and y will have 2 as a common factor. But it is opposite to the fact that x and y are co-prime. So it's very, very obvious. Just now we get to know about it. Here is, if it takes in the form of rational number, these numbers are that integers which are co-prime. But these, when we solve this here, we get to know they are still not co-prime because they still have a factor of 2. Both have a common factor of 2. That means it's not co-prime. That means whatever we have, whatever we have know about root 2 here, it means that so whatever we get to know about root 2 here is this is not a co-prime here. This is not a co-prime because the factor of 2. When the factor of 2 here is not a co-prime, that means whatever we have contradict, whatever we have think, what we have think that root is a rational, that means it's a wrong. It's a wrong. Why it is wrong? Because if we assume root 2 as a irrational, it has to follow the process of rational. What is the process of rational? It takes the form of p by q. When it takes the form of p by q means that p by q are or x upon y are that integers which are co-prime, which don't have a common factor. But we get to know on solving the equations that they x and y both still have a factor of 2. That means if they still have a factor of 2, they are not co-prime. If they are not co-prime, they are not taking the case of rational number because they are not co-prime. So they are not rational. That means whatever we have assumed that they are rational is actually wrong. It is actually wrong. So if they are not rational, then what they are? They are actually irrational. So we contradict the thing, right? We assume it in a wrong way. We follow the process of we follow that process to prove to try to prove it whatever we have assumed. But obviously that is very obvious whatever we have assumed is not right. So that means the final result will always become not right. Like in this case, there is always a common factor. So I hope we get this point here. This is the way. So on the same context, we have now we are using this theorem again for other questions. You'll get some idea here because you need to solve 2 3 more questions in order to get the idea what I want to say it again here. So basic theorem is if p is a prime number, if p divides a square, then p divides also a. Let's solve it another with the help of another question. We'll have a further clarified idea. Let us say we need to prove 5 plus root 5 is irrational. 5 plus root 5 is irrational. Now we'll take it in a very simple way. How? And one more homework is for you. See, I have tried to prove root 2 is irrational. You will take some example of root 3, root 5, root 7 and try to solve it in this way, which we have solved it. Same thing. So you get to know how this theorem works actually. So now next we have to prove here is prove 5 plus root 5 is irrational. Again, we'll use a matter of contradiction here. We'll assume that 5 plus root 5 is what? Rational. If it is rational, it takes the value of x upon y or p by q. But x and y must be what? Co-prime. Must be what? Co-prime. That is very important. Now, here, understand one thing. See, this 5 is a rational number. This root 5 is what? A rational number. I hope you get this point. Individually, if I let's talk like this, right? Now here in the combination here, let us assume 5 plus root 5 is rational. That means 5 plus root 5 is x upon y, means p by q, where x and y are integers and also they are co-primes, right? And y is not equal to 0. That is very obvious. Now let us say here this 5 plus root 5 is x upon y. Let's take this 5 to here on this from LHS to towards RHS. Then root 5 will becomes what? X upon y minus 5. I hope you get this point. Now let's see here. This 5 is rational. This x upon 5 is also a rational form. Why 5 is rational? Can I write 5 as 5 upon 1? If this is 5 upon 1, it takes a form of p by q or x upon y. Yes, it's a form of rational. So this is also a form of rational. This is a form of rational. And in between the sign is what? Minus. You have studied in the earlier classes in the right that rational, in the ninth class we have studied here, rational minus operations on numbers, right? So rational minus rational is what? Rational number. So if we subtract any two rational number, we must get a rational number. That is a rule. So just I have mentioned here, if we subtract rational from a rational number, the resultant would be a rational number. But here the resultant is not rational. Here the resultant is what? Irrational, because root 5 is what? Irrational. Now the root 5 is irrational. That means whatever we have contradict, that means whatever we have think that 5 plus root 5 is rational, we assume it in the wrong way. We assume it in a wrong way. So if it is not rational, that means what? It is automatically it is actually irrational. I hope you get this point, because we assume like this, it's a rational, we contradict. So we try to solve it here. We take this x upon y here, and we know this. Now we use the basic operation on the numbers, that is rational minus rational is what? Is equal to rational number. So the resultant should become rational, but actually it is coming towards an irrational. Why? Because root 5 is what? Irrational. So the resultant is not right. That means whatever we have think is not right. So that's why the result is not coming in the right way. So that means we contradict to the in a wrong way. I hope you get this point. Let's solve one more question like this. Prove 1 by root 2 is irrational. So again assume it's a rational. So if it's a rational, it takes a form of x upon y. I hope you get this point. So let's say if I cross multiply, so root 2 is what? Y upon x. Again, y is taken the form of rational, or x in the form of rational. Why y upon x rational upon x rational? I can write y upon 1, x upon 1. So what's the big deal in that? X upon 1, right? So like y upon 1 and x upon 1, right? So this is rational because it takes a form of p by q. I hope you get this point. So we just now studied that rational minus rational is what? Rational. But rational divided by rational, it is also a rational. It is also a rational, right? So it is also a rational. That means the resultant should be rational. But here the resultant is not rational. Why? Because here the root 2 is coming. This is not rational. Rational upon rational should be rational, no? But this is not a rational. This is irrational. Root 2 is not a rational number. That means whatever we have think is not right. If this is not right, then automatically it becomes what? Irrational. I hope you get this point. So I've explained it in a very simple way, right? So just go through with this. You'll have a more clarified idea about this, right? So next one, prove that 7 root 5 is irrational. So let us assume 7 root 5 is a rational number. Again, if it is a rational number, then 7 root 5 is what? X upon y. So x upon y. So let's take here root 5 is x upon y. If I take 7 down here, that becomes what? 7y. So this is rational, this is rational. Resultant should becomes what? Rational. Because rational upon rational is what? Rational. But here it's coming what? Irrational. Because root 5 is what? Irrational. That means whatever we have assumed is not right. That means what? 7 root 5 is what? Irrational. Again the same thing. Now next point is we need to know here is revisiting rational numbers and their decimal expressions. Right? So revisiting here, this is a previous class figure of class 9th. We know that rational numbers and their decimal expansions, and rational numbers means that numbers which take the form of p by q, and we are using here the decimal expansion of rational number. Decimal expansions means there are three types of decimal expansions are here in the rational number: terminating, non-terminating. That is non-terminating repeating and non-terminating non-repeating. So terminating means if I take 2.14, it is a terminating decimal. That is 2. If I remove this decimal, that is becomes 214 upon 100. So it's a terminating decimal, right? So this is here is again repeating decimal. So if I take 2.99 like this, right? So 9999. So this is a repeating decimal. This is a repeating, and this is also non-terminating, means it goes on up to infinite, but it is actually a repeating. So in this repeating sequence, we can convert it in the form of p by q. So then that's why it becomes what? Rational number. Whereas it is a non-terminating, non-repeating means it is not a rational. It is actually an irrational number. It is an irrational number. Just now we have taken example about root 2, root 3. Just now we have previously said it, right? Let us say, for example, 3.1234578 9 like this. Let's say 1 2 3 4 3 1 6 8 9. So these pairs are not repeating, right? And it goes up to infinite. So these are called what? Irrational numbers. So I hope you get this point. We have already studied in the previous classes here. Just have a quick glimpse of it. That's why I'm saying this. Now, same thing here. Rational numbers will take the form of p by q. Just now I've told you. So kindly please go through that. Very simple here. So again, my request here, go through your previous class, 9th class, have a quick glimpse of all the concepts which I've learned earlier, because it will definitely help you to understand the concepts here in this particular chapter. So revisiting, yes. Now next important point we are going to learn here is revisiting rational numbers and their decimal expansions. Now we need to know about the theorems here. Very simple theorem. How? See, first first read the statements here. Let's x be a rational number whose decimal expansions terminates. Then x can be expressed in the form p by q, where p and q are co-prime and the prime factorization of q is of the form 2 raised to power n 5 raised to power m, where n and m are non-negative integers. Now, what do you mean by it? What is trying to say? He is trying to say here is, let us say, for example, 13 upon 125. Let's take this example which I've given to you, 13 upon 125. I know this is a rational number. Why? Because it's in the form of p by q. Now I need to find the decimal expansion of this rational number. Means if I properly solve it, what decimals I'll get. So I know about the long division method, right? Which I'll simply use it and I'll get it. So if I take 125 13 like this, right? I know. So I'll do like the so I'll take the here 0.0 1 125 here, this is 5, right? So like this, right? So 5 here, 500, right? This is 0, this is 0, right? So this is 4 and this becomes 500. So 0.104 like this. But this is a long division method. I don't want to use long division method. Understand here. So we are using another way to find the decimal expansion without using the long division method. So without using the long division method, let's find the decimal expansion in a very simple way. How? See, this is 13 upon 125. This is the rational number. Now how do I find the decimal expansion of it? In the denominator, first of all, find the prime factorization of this denominator. You need to find the prime factorization, right? So you need to find the prime factorization here in the form of 2 raised to power n, 5 raised to power m. So let us say 13. So 125 can be write in the form of 5 raised to power 3. In the form of 5 raised to power 3. I hope you get this point. You know what? Why I say about 2 raised to power n and 5 raised to power m? Very interesting point. This is very simple. Uh, you know this very well. Let us say, all right. Let's first of all solve this question. All right, and then I'll get to know how why I use this. This is 13 upon 5 raised to power 3 when I solve it, right? 125 is what? 125 is what? If I take the prime factors of 125, it is 5 into 5 into 5. That's a called prime factorization, na? So this it becomes what? 5 cube. But I need to take in the form of 2 raised to power n and 5 raised to power m. That means power of 5 I got, but power of 2 is not here because 125 does not contain 2. So what? I can write like this 2 raised to power 0. It is the same thing. It is actually the same thing. I hope you get this point. And anything to the power 0 is always 1, is always 1. Anything to the power 0. If I take 3 raised to power 0, it is 1. So, because that will becomes 1, then that is the reason it just simply remains 5 raised to 3. There is no requirement of writing it. So it actually taking in the form of 5 raised to power m and 2 raised to power n, which he says in this particular scenario. So you have to find the prime factorization of q. Q means p by q. Q means here denominator in the form of what? 2 raised to power n, find 5 raised to power m. That's it. I know I get in the 5 raised to power m, but 2 raised to power n means I know because I put 0, that is the same thing. So I hope you get this point here. Now, see, understand here. What I do here is, all right, see, there are two ways to solve it. There are two ways to do this. 13 upon 5 cube. I get it out here. Just leave 2 raised to power 0. Right now, just leave out here. Because if I don't, because I have to find the decimal expansion. I have to find the decimal expansion. Because if I write 2 raised to power 0, it will make no use of me. Why? Because see, what I'll do here is I need certain power of 2 here. Certain power of 2. How do I find it? See, the power of 5 is 3 here. Now use this power, maximum power in 2 also. If I take this power in 2, same power, 2 raised to power 3. But if I simply write like this, it becomes the equation becomes imbalanced. Then I have to also multiply it in the numerator. Same thing. If I get the same thing here, then there will be no problem. Because if I cut, it becomes the same equation. So what I hear is, I have checked the maximum power of 5. Then on the basis of that, I use the same power in the 2. And that was not present earlier. So I have to multiply in the numerator also if I use in the denominator. Now the power of 5 and 2 have become the same because now 3, 5 are here and 3, 2 are here and 3, 2 are here in the denominator because powers are 3. So what is the benefit of here? See, understand. Just now I told you previously in the initial chapter, just now I told you in the starting of a chapter how it becomes 10. There is one question, how it becomes 10. Prime factor which makes any converts into 10 or 100, it is the 2 and 5. It's the prime factor of 2 and 5. I need 1, 2 and 5 to multiply. If 1, 2 and 5 multiply, it becomes 110. It becomes what? 110. Now here 3, 5 and 3, 2 are here. That means 10 into 10 into 10. 1, 5 into 2, next 5 into 2, and next 5 into 2. Alright. So that means it becomes 3 zeros. It becomes what? 3 zeros. I hope you get this point, because these all fives and all twos are converted into like this. So 13 into 2 cube divided by 1000. Why 1000? 1 5 into 2 is 110. Next 5 into 2 is next 10, like this, right? So in this way, it becomes very simple. So 13, 2 raised to power, that is 2 cube, right? That has become 8. 13 into 8 upon 1000. So 13 8s are 104, that is upon 1000. So it becomes 0.104. That means that's it. Because to find the decimal expansion in the denominator, you must get in the form of zeros. Then also then only you will get decimal expansions like this without using the long division. So if you don't want to use the long division, then this is one process by which you can find the decimal expansion, because in the denominator you are converting in the form of 2 raised to power n and 5 raised to power n, which results every 2 and 5 into the 0. So that becomes very easy to make it in the form of decimal expansion. That's the point it needs to stay. I hope you get this point, right? So yes, same thing is saying, let's x is equal to p by q. So x is any number here that is equal to p by q. So such that prime factorization of q is in the form of 2 by n 5 raised to power n, where n and n are same things. So x has a decimal expansion which terminates. All right. So this is very simple here. See how in the first here we have find the value of an expansion. In the second, we just want to check whether this decimal expansion which you are going to get after solving it, is it terminating or is it non-terminating? If it is terminating, it is a rational number. If it is non-terminating, it is actually an irrational number. Why? We know in the number system, irrational numbers are non-terminating and non-repeating. I hope you get this point, right? Sorry, and one more point I want to convey here is, because in the rational also we'll get non-terminating, but that is in the repeating process. So in the irrational, non-terminating and non-repeating should be there. Right. Okay. So that is a point which I miss here. So I have conveyed it to you. See, let's use it with the help of example. Then you get to have a better idea what I want to say. This is example 17 by 8. So he says we need to just check whether whatever the value will come in the form of decimal, is it terminating or what, or is it terminating, non-terminating? We need to check it out here, right? See how it's very obvious. This is very obvious that if in the denominator, we'll get 1000 like this, 100 like then this will automatically will result into a terminating decimal. Why terminating decimal? Because if I take 414 upon 100, it becomes 4.14. It's a terminating decimal. That means if in the denominator I'll get in the values of 10 raised to power something, 10 raised to power 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 100, 1000, whatever it is here, in the form of 10 to the power something, then the answer will always come in the form of terminating. Now, in order to get in the form of 10, 100, 1000, I need to get a form of 2 raised to power n and 5 raised to power m, or 5 raised to power n or 2 raised to power m, whatever it is here. So same thing, that's not a big deal for that. So here he says 2 raised to power n, 5 raised to power m. That means I need the prime factor of 2 and 5 in the denominator. So in order to get a prime factor of 2 and 5 in the denominator, here this is 17 upon 8. So I need to check denominator. First of all, I need to get the prime factor of it. So this is 17 divided by 8. This is 8 is what? 2 multiply by 2 multiply by 2. So that means what? 2 cube. So this is 2 cube here, and just now I told you 17 by 2 cube, right? So you have two ways to do. If in the exam this says you need to find the value of an expansion, then what you will do? What you will do? You know the highest power of 2 is 3, so you will also use 5 raised to power 3 and 5 raised to power 3, and you know you will get resultant in the three zeros downwards. So 17 multiplied by 5 raised to power 3. So this is 2 to power cube multiplied by 5 to power cube. So that is 17 into 125 upon 1000. And it will get to the right result for decimal expansion. But they does not say about you need to find the decimal expansion value. You just need to find whether it is terminating or non-terminating. So simple logic here is you need to know whether it takes the form of 2 raised to power n or 5 raised to power n or not in the denominator. If it is takes the form, it is terminating. It is terminating. So denominator here has 2 raised to power cube. That means 2 as its factor. 2 as its factor. So denominator has 2 as its factor, but it can take the form of 2 raised to power n, 5 raised to power n. How? 17 divided by 8. 8 is what? 2 raised to power 3. So 5 raised to power 0 I can also write like this. If I write 5 raised to power 0, that means it takes the form of 2 raised to power n into 5 raised to power m. So that means, yes, so that means it actually takes the form in the given equation. So if it takes a form, that means it has a decimal expansion which terminates. Why it terminates? Because automatically every 2 and 5 will result into 1 0. That's the main simple funda behind this. So here the next theorem, yes, so next theorem here is the reverse of it. It is actually reverse what we have said it. Just read it out here. If x is equal to p by q, be a rational number such that prime factors of q is not of the form 2 raised to power n, 5 raised to power n, where n and m are non-negative integers, then x has a decimal expansion which is non-terminating and repeating, recurring. So let's use it with the help of example. So he says the reverse thing which we are learned right now. He says it's not of the form. Previously we said of the form. So what only process we need to follow here is whatever number is given in the denominator, find the prime factors of it. So if I do like this, 64 by 455, the prime factors are 5 into 7 into 13. So I know that 64 here has 5 in it. It can also have 2 in. If I write 2 raised to power 0, it's the same thing because anything to the power 0 is 1. So it has a form of 2 raised to power n and 5 raised to power m. There is no doubt. But the point here is it also has a form of 7 and 13, which is not required, which is actually not required because we want only the form of 2 raised to power n and 5 raised to power m. But if it takes extra of 7 and 13, no, it will not comes in the form of rational number. It will always become what? Non-terminating, repeating, recurring decimal. So with this we can easily check whether it results in recurring or whether it results in non-terminating, repeating, recurring decimal or not. So that's a point out there. I hope you get this point. This is a simple logic you have to follow. Only thing is that if in the denominator you get this form, yes, you'll get this terminating. If you don't get, you'll not get this. So these are some examples here. I'll take one more example here, 16 by 91. So first of all, in the denominator I'll have this. So in the denominator, first of all, I'll use this factorization process. Factorization here. All right, so I think there is some misprint here. There is some misprint. So just one second. The denominator is not in the form of this. No, this is misprint. So this is 16 divided by 91. The number which has given, right? 16 divided by 19, 1. Here. And no, I'll just solve this question for you. This is 16 divided by 91. All right. So in a denominator, we'll use here. We know that 13 into 7 is what? 91 into 91. And we know that in the denominator, there is nothing of 2 and nothing of 5. So no power of 2, no power of 5. All right. But you can say, sir, if there is no power of 2, no power of 5, no power of 5, you can write like this: 2 raised to power 0 and 5 raised to power 0. Yes, you are right. We can take this, no doubt. But we have also an additional power of 13 and 7, which we actually don't want, because we only want the form of this. If we don't get this form, that means it is a non-terminating decimal expansion. And if we get only this form, 2 and 5, that means it is a terminating decimal expansion. This is a simple logic behind it. I hope you get this point. If 2 and 5 form is only here, then terminating. If 2 and 5 form is not there, non-terminating. That's it. So this is a point out here. Yeah, and this is a question here. The following real numbers have decimal expansions as given below. In each case, decide whether they are rational or not. If they are rational, what can you say about the prime factors of Q? So this is the point you need to remember in order to solve the question like this. Rational, the factors are in the form of 2 and 5. Irrational factors are not in the form of 2 and 5. That's it. Just now we get to know about the example here. If it takes the form of 2 and 5, that means they have they are actually, the factors are in the form of rational numbers. But if they are not in the form of 2 and 5, they are actually irrational. Just now we get to know see in the example. So you can see from the example one more here: 43.123456789. See, it has a terminating decimal. We have seen clearly here it has a terminating decimal. So in this question we have to find about the prime factors of Q. If they are rational, what can you say about the factors of Q? We just need to find. See, this is very, very important. We need to say whether it is rational or irrational, because we have to say about the factors. So if the factors are like this, 2 and 5, then it is rational. If they are not in the form of 2 and 5, they are irrational. So we just have to say whether it is rational or whether it is irrational. So we have to decide in the question, right? Whether they are rational or not. So this is the question here. Since it has a terminating decimal, so you can see it has a terminating decimal, right? So it ends out here, its end. There is no going on. It has a specific end out here. So if it has a specific end, it can be converted in the form of P by Q. So it has a terminating decimal. And if it has a terminating decimal, it is a rational number. It is a rational number. Since it has a non-terminating and recurring decimal, right? So this is non-terminating. It goes on infinite, and it goes on infinite, and it is a recurring, right? So it goes on infinite, and it is also non, see, 120 1200 12000, right? So it has a non-terminating, there is no end, and non-repeating. So it is actually an irrational number. It's very simple out here. So I hope you get this point. So this is all about the chapter here. I hope you get a fair idea about all the things here. So thank you so much and have a nice day. Take care.